Hey everyone, I'm Dino Bidala, and welcome to tonight's Dino Bidala Show on SiriusXM channel 127. It's Monday, April 12th. I'm Dino Bidala, here to be your MBFF as always. Hope you had a good weekend. But over the weekend, we learned about two cases involving the police and African Americans. And the first was something from December involving a lieutenant in the U.S. Army, active duty, wrongfully and abusively handled by the police department with him, and very abusive. I mean, the one officer's fired already, sprayed with pepper spray, conflicting information, screaming automatic right at the top of the time they pulled him over. That's just wrong. If it wasn't for a video, we wouldn't know much about it. But then second, even worse, is the case of Daunte Wright, 20 years old, killed by the police right outside of Minneapolis. And it was very curious, the facts yesterday until we had the police had the press conference today with the mayor. But what went down? There was these stories about he was pulled over and that there was a warrant for his arrest, and then he fled and they shot him and killed him. And I think it conjured up for a lot of people a car driving down the road and the police shooting at the car because this is a fleeing felon who must be stopped before he kills people. Turns out those weren't the facts at all. The problem with Daunte Wright, he did have a warrant. What the police said today was a gross misdemeanor, which is, I guess, a different term they use in Minnesota for a misdemeanor. It's not even a felony. But what happened was, and the police released the body cam, said Mr. Wright, this young man, did get back in his car and apparently did try to get away from the police. And the officer, one of the officers, wanted to use her taser. And she announced, taser, 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 informing the other cops what's going on. But she made a mistake. And she used her gun. She shot Daunte Wright, and he died just a few blocks away. He crashed into a car and died there in front of his girlfriend who was sitting in the car. Now, the police have been transparent about saying she made a mistake. They even released a video where she curses and said, "I shot him," and it was clearly a mistake. It doesn't mean you make a mistake and you get away with it. She'll probably be charged with manslaughter, at least she should be. There's potentially murder too, but I think it's more likely manslaughter, but we don't know all the facts yet. To remind people, if it sounds familiar, the situation of a young black man unarmed being killed by the police, where the police say, "I thought I was using my taser, I used the gun." There was the movie Fruitvale Station dealing with Oscar Grant from 2009, where this very scenario happened, captured on video at the time, early phone video at the time. It's a little grainy. It went viral, caused an outrage. The officer in that case was charged and was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. It's not what the family wanted. It's not what the community wanted, but he was charged, and the jury picked what was the least severe verdict to hold him responsible. I can't tell you for sure that this police officer will be convicted who killed Daunte Wright. You might say, well, how could that not be? Well, in the case of Minnesota, and like so many states, it's very hard to convict a police officer. And the officer can say, well, I was fearful for my co-police officer's safety. So yeah, I made a mistake. I reached for my taser and I got my gun and I shot him. But still, it was instantaneous, and it was what happened only simply to protect my fellow officers. If it gets to a jury could fine for that. I'm not saying they should. She's guilty. She should be charged with at least, again, she should be convicted at least manslaughter if her story is accurate. If we find out anything more about her, it could be murder. But this is the world we live in. We live in a world where we see video after video of black people unarmed being killed. We watched this video today at the very time, not miles away, that Derek Chauvin's on trial for killing George Floyd in the middle of the street in broad daylight. This shooting took place at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If this officer is not charged, if the officer is not convicted, the message is very clear. You can kill an unarmed black person in broad daylight and you can walk. And I don't even know what the pain is like to be African American and see this, but not being African American, but being a fellow minority and watching, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see video after video. It's hard to believe in this country that Black lives actually matter when we see this parade of violence and cruelty visited upon one community in particular, and officers in general walk free. To remind people, something I've talked about on my show, how many white police officers have been convicted in Minnesota of murder for on-the-job activities? Zero. Only one police officer in Minnesota has ever been convicted of murder for an on-duty activity. 2019, but the police officer was black. He's also a Muslim. His name is Muhammad Noor. So it gives you a sense that if you're white, different standard. Look at these two cases. You have an active duty lieutenant wearing his uniform, pepper sprayed. You have another young man in broad daylight sitting in the car with his girlfriend, accidental discharge. It's funny, Dylan Roof, who walked into a black church and executed 9 African Americans in the hopes of starting a race war, I don't recall him being pepper sprayed. I don't recall the police having an accidental discharge. What I do recall is that Dylan Roof said he was hungry and the police took him to Burger King to get food. Institutional racism in our society permeates all of this, including the stop. The fact that this young man was stopped for what they're saying now was an expired registration or might be an inspection, depending where you live, that kind of term. Keep in mind that studies have shown that black Americans are pulled over at 20% higher rate than white Americans. The minute you interact with police, everything changes. From there, if you're a black male, you have a 3 times higher chance of being killed by the police if you're a white male. If you're pulled over, you have a 2.5 times greater chance of your vehicle being searched if you're black than if you're white. If you're arrested, your chances for bail are much lower when you're black than you're white. And if you're convicted of the very same crime, the chances are you'll get 10 to 20% more severe prison sentence, even though you have the same priors, same circumstances if you're black than you're white. Our system's in desperate need of help. And I fear that when Derek Chauvin is convicted, and he will be convicted, that people will say, well, the system works. Sort of like after Barack Obama was elected, and we heard people go, well, we must be post-racial. No. If somehow Derek Chauvin is not convicted, it's the most egregious miscarriage of justice of my lifetime. I think he will be convicted. I'm pretty confident of that. Doesn't mean it's over. The injustice in our system runs deeper. So we'll talk about that a lot more in my show tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. on SiriusXM. If you don't subscribe to SiriusXM, come to the website, check it out. Free trial. Call in, be a part of our family. We got a lot of work to do. Man, this nation has a lot of work to do. If you want progress, if you want to change it, stay active. There's no better place than the family on my show, the Dino Vidal Show, every night, 6 to 9 p.m. Thanks for tuning in.